Hi guys, it's Wade McMaster here. Got another video for you today. Just a quick one for just beginners out there wanting to create just a simple text logo for their website. I'm going to show you how you can get something pretty decent looking using Photoshop. So if you've got Photoshop but you can't afford graphic designer and you just want to get the basics, this is how you can create a logo for your website and even for social media if you want to. Now, because we're working with social media and we're only doing a basic website, obviously I recommend you eventually getting a proper logo done with a graphic designer if you're in business, or learning a vector program like Adobe Illustrator or something like that. It's a little bit more complex, but for now, just to get you started, this should do the trick. So we're going to start off by going up the top here to File and then to New to create a new document. Now what I'm going to do, because we're going to be exporting one of these for social media, I'm going to change the width to 1080, so 1080, and then another 1080, so 1080 by 1080 pixels. Create, and that's our canvas we're going to work on. So I'm going to start off just with a nice boring background. So if you are definitely planning on working on a black background or a green background, you should use that color in your background, even though we're going to remove it when we export a PNG for the website. But for now, let's just say I'm going to be putting this on a white background. So I'm going to fill this in white. So you see over here on the right, I've got a layers palette. Now on this layers palette, I have this white square, and I'm going to have all these objects piling up on top of here as I create. And when I'm ready, I can simply turn off this background layer here, and it'll be transparent. But the next step I'm going to start is typing. I'm going to type up a name. I've come up with a bit of a dummy name. I'm call it Primal Food Co. Now you can start off. We're going to get more interesting and more complex as we go, but it's not going to be overly difficult. The idea is I'm going to click here. I'm going to type in capital letters, Primal, Primal Food Co. This is using a font called pronounced Montserrat. You might just be happy with that, hypothetically, but I do recommend at least even popping a space between the words. One effect you can also do is you can highlight the second word, and up top here where you got your font name, which is Montserrat, and it's got the weight and the next drop down, I can choose different thicknesses depending on what the font has to offer. So I'm going to go with a regular to get it nice and thin. I'm just going to ignore that box that popped down there, and I'm going to go across. And as you can see, I've already got a logo there I could use if I decide to, which is it doesn't look too bad. It's a nice effect. If I want to, I can decide to not use caps. I can type it as in like title case and get a cool effect that way if I want to. It's not too hard to get a logo. If you've got a decent font, picking a font is definitely going to be a big part of doing a text-based logo. For now, I'm just going to undo, so I hit Control Z. Get back to this original logo. The other thing you can do is if you don't want it to be too wide. For a website, I generally tend to go pretty landscape just because it's using on a navigation, but sometimes if you've got a lot of items in navigation, a really wide logo doesn't work. Also, because of the size of this, how wide it is, there's a lot of wasted space if I'm going to use this for a social media icon. So I'm going to click here, I'm just going to click enter. Now I hit Control Enter to get out of that just then, but if I want to change some of the properties of this text, like maybe this text is too big, maybe I want it to be centered, there's a few tools we can play with. If you can actually leave it left aligned if you decide that's what you want, but for me I'm going to have play around and try and get it looking a little bit different again. So at the top here we've got some basic options, but right on the far right we've got this little box here. And so it should also be under Windows, under I believe it's text or font. But yeah, we're just going to click this little button here, bring up character, I should say. So character. So this little character box here allows me to play with things. So if I highlight this text here, I can make that smaller. At the moment it's 192 points. I'll type in, say, 160. And that's the line height. Sorry, I thought selected the wrong area, but this area here is actually the line height. So I can adjust that if I want to, so that we get a closer line height. So that's actually not too bad the way it is there, but maybe I want to make the space between the letters here a little bit thinner. So underneath that, where it has this, so you see the line height has a vertical arrow, the horizontal has a VA with a horizontal arrow. I can actually click this and make it -25, and the letters get closer together. If they get too close, they can get a little too full on, unless of course that is the effect you're after. For now, we're going to go about, say, -50. And in order to change the size of the font itself, I'll go up the top here to 187. I'll type in that 160. And maybe that's starting to look the way I want it to. And of course, I can go here and center it. And that text is now centered. So you can continue to play with that if you want. Even if I don't have the text selected, I can go into this section again, maybe type in 150 to bring it a bit closer. I can just simply type in 140, keep trialing it till it's about as close as I like. So that's a pretty basic logo there. I could export that to social media if I wanted to, or crop it and put it on the website, which I will show you how to do later. But for now, it's that's what we're looking at, and maybe there's more I want to do with it. So maybe you want to say change the color of this primal text up here. I can highlight that, and up the top where it has black, I click on this. I get a little color picker which is popped up on this other screen over here. Maybe I want to make it like a brown color. So you can see that change there. So now I've got this brown colored text. I hit Control Enter, and I now have my two colors, and things are starting to break up a little bit and look a certain way, which is pretty cool. So as you can see, the color is also available over here, and there's a few other options you can have a play with, such as indenting the letters, that sort of thing. Not really, just have a play with them, see what you get out of them. You can play with the width of the font if you want to, so 80%. I personally don't like stretching fonts out of shape, so I just hit Control Z to undo that. So you've got a few options here in the text, but let's say you want something more than just plain text. Maybe you've been scrolling through your fonts, I've got a few thousand fonts on here, but maybe you can't find anything you like. So what you can do is go to a font website. Now I actually have a blog post I'll link to below, which has a bit of a process for what we're going through here. It'll also list a variety of websites you can go to download fonts. But I'm actually going to bring up Google Fonts first and foremost. So I'm just going to switch over to that. Okay, so I'm on Google right now, and I'm just going to type in Google Fonts. You see we've got Google Fonts here at the very top. Now I can choose a font from here if I want to, and actually install it for Photoshop. And the good thing about Google Fonts is if I'm using it on my website, I can actually also use it on my website, which is another video I plan on doing in the future. So keep an eye out for that one. If you do want to see that one when it comes out, so you can use these fonts on your websites, please subscribe, and that way you'll get notified when it pops up. So let's say I want something like this, something that's a bit more standoutish. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click select this font, and you see this little pop-up down the bottom appears. I click on that. Now it's quite simple. I can go through and select a number of fonts if I want to here and there, but because I've selected this one, I can even remove it. I can see how big it, large it, and have a look. I can try out. Maybe I'll see what the word primal looks like. Highlight it, type in primal. I think, yep, that looks pretty good. So yep, I add that font by clicking the plus symbol, and then this little one family selected box that pops up down here, I click on that, and I'm going to click this little download symbol top right. And now that font is basically downloaded. So I'll just show you very quickly how you can install that. This is on PC. Unfortunately, I can't really show you on Mac because I don't have a Mac, but it shouldn't be too hard to find out how to install fonts on Mac if you look it up. But the basic idea is here. I'm going to open this up. I'm just going to click open. And I've got the font here. What I can do is if I have multiple fonts, I can just simply highlight them all, right click and install. Because this is in a zip file, I'm just going to double click it to open it up. And you get this little font viewer, and at the top here an install button. So I click that install button and it installs the font. Take note of the font name, Tradewinds, or whatever font name you choose. So that way when you switch back to Photoshop, we can select Primal here. I go up the top. Up top I type in Tradewinds. And you see that's now changed over. I'll even make this lowercase, which is actually still uppercase, but you get the idea. So now I've done this, I think this font's a bit small compared to the bottom line now, so I'm going to go up top here to where it says 187. I'm going to make it about 220. And now I don't like the way the R touches the O, so I'll go back over here to the line height. Maybe I'll make it 155. And now we're starting to get a bit more the kind of font that we're looking for. So let's say I've got this. I think, yep, that's looking good. However, maybe I'm really unhappy with that background color and the white. Maybe I've decided that I like that brown. I want to use it as the background. So instead of just exporting it as white, I'm going to take this go to the color dropper here, and I'm going to pick this brown. So I'm going to hover my little dropper over the brown here, click OK, and grab my paint bucket tool on the left over here, and I'm going to click on layer 1, drop that bucket, and now I have that as my background color. So the only problem is now the brown text doesn't show up against the brown background. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to got this selected, click on the color at the top here, and choose white. And you see now we have our font. So there's a few different things we could do with this too. We don't have to keep this exact variation. I can, like I said, I can have them side by side like before. Maybe you want to do something more creative with the food co. So what I'm going to do is here on my layers palette, you can see I've got layer 1 and I've got primal food. I'm actually going to right click and duplicate this layer. So you see here it says duplicate layer. Let me get this window pop up. Okay. Now I have primal food co and primal food co copy. So making sure that this one's selected, I'm going to double click, and now I've got the text selected there. So I'm just going to click a few of the arrows and I'm going to remove the word primal. And so now I just have food co there. Now if you want to move this, an easy way to do it is to actually go to edit, free transform, or basically hit Control T, and that way you can move it around to here. I'm going to grab this text tool again, and this time as a different approach. Now that they're not overlapping, I can just highlight this text, remove the food, Control Enter, and now I have two different objects I can play with. So if I select this food co layer on the right here, hit Control T again, I can move it into position, get something pretty nifty. So maybe something a little bit more understated for that particular font. I'll just hit enter there to finalize that. Now I've got this cool food co logo. Now I feel that the font's a little bit too close, and go back over here for the lettering width, or the space between the lettering I should say. Make that -10. It's a little bit more distinct. And maybe I'll change the color to a bit more of a earthier, yellowier sort of color. Okay, so now we've got our logo. So that's basically how you can get the text together. One thing we can also do is even add a few little effects. So if I want to go to food co here, I can right click, go to blending options, and this little window will pop up, which keeps popping up on the other screen. And I'm going to go down. So you've got all these effects. I suggest you have a look and have a play with them, because if I go through it here, it will just take too long. I'm going to go right down the bottom here to drop shadow and add that in. So I click on the word drop shadow after I click the word drop shadow, and I get my options here. When I play with the distance, you can see that the shadow drops away from the text a little bit, depending on how far. And I can move the angle here by grabbing this and get more of a 45. I can blur it a little bit if I want to. I can also tone it down, make it semi-transparent. And just you can play with these sliders here until you get the desired effect. So I'm going to click OK on that. If I want that exact same drop shadow on the word primal, I'm going to right click, go copy layer style, and then on primal, so I click that, I'm going to go, it should be in here somewhere amongst all this. So I right click, paste layer style. And now it also has a shadow. So now we've got this cool image we can use probably for social media. One thing I've noticed though too is that it is not sort of it's not vertically and horizontally centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to highlight Control click. So I've got this one selected here. Holding that Control, I'm going to select both layers. Hit Control T or go to Edit, Free Transform. And I'm just going to move this around. You see it sort of clicks into place when that little line there. So it's going to click into place. I'm going to see now that it's centered horizontally. I'm going to move it down, and you can see now we've got both lines. It's centered horizontally and vertically. So if I want to use this for social media, what I can do now, for one, I'm going to save the PSD for future use. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'll call it Logo, File, Social. Now I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to Export, Save for Web here. I get this cool little window pop up here, and it gives me all of the options. You can see this is sort of zoomed in a bit. If I want to view it, I can hold Control and just sort of mouse wheel out, Alt I should say, and mouse wheel out. It's pretty straightforward sort of interface. You can zoom in and out here too. So maybe I want to make it 33%, 50%, so you can see what you're looking at. I'm going to save it as a JPEG, and I'm going to check the quality of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to zoom back in over this corner. Now, if I make this quality too low, you'll see the file size is nice and small, but there's lots of artifacts around the text. So I'm going to knock it up until I'm happy with it. Okay, so about 65. It's nice and clean. It's only 50 kilobytes. So I'm just going to actually zoom back out to fit in view. So I'm happy with that. I've got a JPEG optimized about 65 quality, and I'm going to save that JPEG. I'll call this social logo. Now I've got that one saved. So what I want to do now is actually create a transparent PNG for my website. So I can pop it on the website, and whatever background it goes on, it'll be transparent and sit on it that way. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go to File. I'm going to go to Save As. I'm going to save a copy. I'm going to call this one Logo File for Website. Now what I'm going to do is actually going to take my square selection tool here, and I'm going to, you see it's just under the 4 arrows there. If you don't see this here, you might have to hold down, because if you have a circle there, you might just have to hold down until that little menu pops out so you hit the square. I'm just going to drag it roughly around that logo there. I'm going to try and keep it reasonably tight, not too tight. And then I'm going to go up to Image at the top here. I'm going to go to Crop. That's going to crop out all that extra space we don't need, because if we keep it that size and pop that logo on our website, it's going to try and display all the blank space above and below the logo, which we don't want. Whereas on social media, we have to fit a perfectly square spot with our image. So we need two different images for the two different purposes. Now, because I want this to be transparent, this is where we come back to our layer. And this one, layer one here with the color, we're actually going to click the eye icon on that and turn it off. So now the little gray and white boxes represent like a transparent background, and we get an image that we can save with a transparent background for use in our website. So now I'm going to go again to File, Export, and then Save for Web. Now because I'm using a JPEG, it's added a white background in there. So up here where it says JPEG, I'm going to click on that, and when the drop down pops up, I'm going to go PNG 24. And now we have our transparent PNG again. But this image is really quite large, and maybe we only need it to be, probably about half the width or even less. We'll go for half. So this is you can see down here we've got image size. It's 949 pixels wide. So if I make that say 450, and then I just simply click onto the next box, it'll resize it. I think that's a pretty good look, pretty good size. WordPress, or from using it for a website, might be able to shrink it easily enough. But it's 32 kilobytes, transparent. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to save it. And that's it. So that's how you can create those images. Obviously, how you install them onto your website depends on the theme you're using, or what your social media you're using for the social media image. I can't really show you exactly how to put that image onto your website, although it's pretty straightforward. There's generally a options panel there where you can click upload logo, that sort of thing. And it's generally pretty straightforward. But that's how you can create a basic text-based logo in Photoshop that you can use on your website or for your social media. So I hope you found that useful. Once again, like I said, if you need to find some fonts, I have got a list of fonts on this blog post, which I'll put the link to below. It has a few font places there, and you'll be able to find have a big selection of different fonts that you can use, and that way you get a logo looking really sharp. And you don't have to be a designer to do it. Just pick your font, type your text, and then go from there. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful. And if you did, please give the video a like or consider subscribing if you want more like this. And I'll see you next time.